Revelation 2832. From the 30th and the 31st of July 1943. Recognizing the supernatural. Everything supersensible seems unacceptable to the human being, but only as long as he is turned towards the earthly and does not strive for spiritual perfection. For then he also does not believe in the survival of the soul, and thus also not in a spiritual kingdom which extends into the earthly kingdom, thus is connected with it. Supersensible things are always sparks of light from the spiritual kingdom as soon as they appear to the human being, visibly or also emotionally. For the beings of the spiritual kingdom sometimes express themselves perceptibly to people, they communicate with them, or they make themselves known to them in some other way in order to cause them to enter into contact with them. They make themselves known to them in a way which cannot be explained with human senses. They are certainly perceptible but not with the physical senses alone. Instead, the will to penetrate the spiritual kingdom has to open people's spiritual eyes and ears in order to be able to hear or see the beings of this kingdom. The spiritual beings can express themselves as soon as people expect them to do so, and therefore there is a certain danger in the attempts to make contact with the beings when no desire for knowledge but only curiosity prompts people to establish a connection with the spiritual world, because such desire takes advantage of the spiritual beings which are still imperfect. The fact that they express themselves can indeed be advantageous insofar as the human being now learns to believe in a continuation of life after death, but he will not receive any information or enlightenment which is valuable for him, because he does not desire such either, and he will also easily be inclined to reject all experiences in this respect again. Thus he is not firmly convinced that a spiritual kingdom exists whose inhabitants want to make contact with people. Nevertheless, he does not completely reject the supersensible. The worldly man, on the other hand, scoffs at the people who enter that kingdom and live in constant contact with the beings. He neither sees nor hears anything supersensible because he lacks all ability to grasp spiritual things and also has no will to penetrate knowledge which touches a supersensible area and is conveyed to people in a supersensible way. He recognizes no spiritual kingdom, consequently also no results from it. And thus he denies everything supersensible, everything he is unable to grasp with his senses. Therefore he will not allow himself to be taught either, for he only ever judges according to his intellectual thinking because he does not want to accept the voice of the Spirit. And intellectual thinking will always oppose the messages from the beyond. The more earthly-minded a human being is, the less he understands things which touch the spiritual kingdom. But God is a spirit, and those who want to find him must seek him in a spiritual way. And that is why the worldly man is also so quick to deny God completely, and he substantiates his opinions with intellectual reasons which can only be refuted with spiritual knowledge which he does not recognize. And yet, every person could convince himself that there are things he is unable to grasp with his bare senses as soon as he himself makes the attempt to connect with the world beyond. As soon as he reluctantly hands himself over to the inhabitants of the spiritual world. If only the desire for truth is the reason for such an attempt, he will very soon be convinced of the existence of spiritual beings in a way which will not harm his spiritual development. He will feel that something still lives apart from him and what is visible to him. He will experience things which he cannot dismiss with his worldly knowledge and which cause him to think seriously. Yet the worldly person is not filled with desire for truth, and then such attempts will only lead him into other doubts, and he will remain ignorant as long as he does not allow himself to be taught by those who know. What reaches down to earth from the beyond will always signify increased knowledge, because it gives information about the spiritual world, about the working of the spiritual beings and about God's reign and activity. but it is to be seen with eyes and heard with ears which are open, thus want to see and hear, and which therefore can also be considered according to their desire. Everything earthly can be proven, everything spiritual, supersensible has to be believed, since no evidence can be produced for it for the sake of the human being's freedom of faith and will. And that is why the knowledge of the supersensible cannot be established as a doctrine, but it is left up to each individual how he takes a stand on it. But the human being who does not recognize anything supersensible will be unspeakably poor in knowledge. The divine activity and working remains hidden from him, the truth remains hidden from him, and his life is empty as long as he only pursues earthly goals and pays no attention to or rejects what approaches him from the kingdom of the supersensible. His knowledge is small and limited, no matter how great it may be in the earthly realm. It will never reach the depth and extent as it would be offered to him from the spiritual kingdom if he were to acknowledge the latter and allow himself to be taught by those who belong to this spiritual kingdom. Amen.